Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Menasha Administration Committee meeting to order. Clerk Galiazzi, could we have roll call, please?
Alderman Nichols.
Here.
Alderman Taylor. Here. Alderman Collier. Here. Alderman Keehan. Here. Alderman Zielinski. Here. Alderman Spencer. Here. Alderman Benner. Here. Alderman Krokremer has been excused.
Thank you. The first item of business this evening is to approve the Administration Committee meeting minutes from June 20th, 2016. Do we have a motion? Alderman Keehan?
Thank you. I'll move to approve the minutes from the Administration Committee meeting of 6/20/16.
And we have a motion and a second from Alderman Benner. Any questions or discussion about the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. Minutes are approved. We have one action item this evening, and that is the license for a private road crossing North Channel Bridge recreational trail agreement between the Wisconsin Central LTD and the City of Menasha. And I just want to make everyone aware that this picture you were handed this evening was at my request. In reading the agreement, I noticed that there was an Exhibit A that was referred to, and I called and asked what that was, and it was simply a legal description of the area. And so I requested that a picture be presented so we know exactly the area that's being talked about. Director Tungate, would you let everyone know what this is in regards to?
Yeah, sure. I think Attorney Captain may be able to speak more to the actual license itself. I think the graphic lays it out pretty clearly. I know former DP Director Radke was in discussions with Canadian National quite a bit on this, and they have agreed to this, I guess we'll call it a modified switchback design, which is a little different than what they normally approve, and we sought this sort of layout just because of the it's not a real heavily used line there, and so this is more user-friendly, but still I think accomplishes what Canadian National was looking for, and that's obviously a safe crossing. And so we had this we reproduced this drawing for you. It was actually produced back, I think it was last year. But so it's been out there a while, and this is the design that has been approved by Canadian National.
And just so the public's aware, we're talking about the end of River Street here, correct?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
This has to do with the Trestle Trail, the new segment.
Yes, and it shows how it will connect to the existing trestle trail as well.
Thank you. We'll look for a motion first to forward this to council, and then we'll open things up for discussion. Alderman Keehan?
Move to forward to council the license for a private road crossing North Channel Bridge recreational trail agreement between Wisconsin Central LTD and the City of Menasha.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion this evening? Seeing none.
I have some.
Okay, Alderman Taylor?
Thank you. Director Tungate, on this, it looks like it's just a clear shot crossing the tracks, but there will be some sort of a skewing process that we will have in there. Is that correct? Like we have at Jefferson Park, or is this?
Well, this is the modified switchback. It's like half a switchback is what it is, and we proposed this with the hopes that Canadian National would be okay with it, and lo and behold, they were. So we're happy that they're happy with this design, because our engineers felt like, yes, we all wanted a safe crossing, but we didn't necessarily want to do the double switchback if we could at all avoid that.
I'm definitely in favor of the double, because of, I've watched this area, and the free wheelies boxcars that get ahead of steam and pull the pin on it or whatever, and let the boxcar sail down to the end of this by itself. And the boxcar movement by itself is pretty quiet, and I certainly would like to see more safety involved here on these tracks, and that would, something I would definitely want. Who is paying the $750 license fee?
Well, maybe just to add something to your other comment, was the reason we chose this design was because it forces the user to look east, because that is where the direction of cars would be coming primarily. Yes, some cars could be stored out on the peninsula and come back the other way, but the vast majority of the movements would be coming from east to west.
But they don't have to dismount their bike.
No. No, you don't.
Crossing the tracks with kids in there, with 300,000 people, if you don't really take extreme measures, you're going to have something happen to somebody. And like I say, how they float these cars on these spurs here, they let them go, and you don't hear them. If you're not looking, you don't see them. And I think at that point, crossing railroad tracks with families, I live on the Friendship Trail here on Broad Street, and I see the people every day that use it, and I don't think it would be that much of an inconvenience for someone to go to a double switchback like that, and then be extremely cautious about crossing those tracks. So that's just my view. And who would be paying the cost for the license fee at $750?
That's a good question. My initial thought would be it's part of the project expense, and so it would be part of, future Nina's, fundraising efforts, and so it'd be part of the project cost. That would be my initial thought on that.
And the city's not part of project cost?
Our commitment to it is part of the overall budget, yes, but I guess in the end, that's really one pot of money.
I am not opposed to the loop to lake, but what I've been opposed to this whole project is the engineer and pay-as-you-go process, and that's not how government should work. We should be doing this, and I understand there's been meetings between our staff and future Nina. I don't see any minutes from those meetings, and that's not right. That this body up here that represents the citizens of this community has no minutes of the meeting, what our costs are. Okay, we're looking at $750 here. We don't know who's going to pay that. Then we're looking at the construction, culverts, drainage, the railroads. They're on the hook for between the 4 to 8 inches of tracks, and we're on the hook for the approaches. So it's a serious approach to that from the new proposed bridge and all the way up to the existing trail. Who's on the financial hook for that and the construction?
So the way this will go with the $750, it will be factored into the overall project budget, and in the end, it will be a grant reimbursable thing, the overall project. So we will have essentially half of this paid for by the state grant.
So how much is the taxpayers of Menasha going to be paying for just this hookup here at the railroad to the Trestle Trail?
I can't answer that right now because we don't know what really the cost of the project is right
now. So
now.
I think what you're trying to say, Brian, is our commitment is $150,000 towards this project. And that will cover this portion of the switchback, the trail, the bridge, the entire process. The only thing that's not covered by that $150,000 is the lot that we purchased at the last meeting.
Okay,
Everything else is included within that.
So help me out, Mayor. In the 2015 budget, we
Had
we didn't approve it throughout the year. We approved $300,000.
I'm sorry, we have a $300,000 commitment,
Yeah.
and we approved $100,000 this year, and we'll have $200,000 in next year's budget is the goal.
Okay.
So that $300,000 plus the DNR grant will cover
Okay. But
this project as well.
I haven't seen any paperwork on the engineering, the costs on this, or on the other side of the bridge at Fox Street. So
That's part of the entire project. And that always was part of the entire project.
Okay, so when are we going to see the numbers on this before the
When
body
it's-
commits to these projects?
Well, when it's bid is when you'll know what it's costing. You won't know, just like a street project. You say we're going to reconstruct Broad Street, we don't know what the actual cost is going to be until the bids come in. We have an estimate that it's going to be,
3.2 million.
yes, but we can't guarantee it's going to be 3.2 or 3 or whatever until those bids come in.
Is the city of Menasha going to be doing the work on this project?
No.
And the proposed grade alignment in that too, that's all part of that 150,000?
Well, that's part of the reason why this switchback is designed the way it was, because of, there's quite a big difference in grade between the current Friendship Trail and where this bridge is going to be. So that's part of the reason why the switchback is designed the way it is.
Well, it doesn't make any difference when you get to the tracks if you have to stop or go through a queuing system. That's for sure. You don't want people doing a straight shot across that, and the stop sign's not going to stop
But
people.
it goes down really quickly on either side of the tracks there.
Absolutely. That costs big bucks. And I'm just trying to figure out here what the city's on that 150, you're going to use that up probably on Fox Street. There's a lot of issues over there that haven't been identified either. With this type of commitment, I see that the railroad can have an immediate termination or a 30-day termination, and with that, that's quite a heavy hammer for the amount of money we're going to have involved with this situation, for them to possibly close it.
This is a very similar agreement to what Nina has on their crossing behind Plexus.
Okay.
This is what we can get, unless we'd want to close other crossings within the city, and I don't think we want to go there.
No, I haven't heard that end of it.
We could go after an actual right-of-way closing, right-of-way crossing, but that would likely require us to close other crossings.
Okay. So in this, it said at the licensees, is that us or is that future NENA too?
Licensees.
In different areas, it talks about the licensee. Is that,
Licensee is us, correct? Is the city of Menasha.
that's the city of Menasha? Okay.
The city of Menasha will own the bridge once it's complete, not future NENA.
Okay. And then on the item 14, the insurance, the licensee shall procure and maintain during the life of this agreement, commercial general liability insurance, which will ensure the indemnity of undertaking the insurance of a combined $5 million and an aggregate of $10 million. So we have to purchase a $10 million policy.
I'll let the attorney comment on that one.
And my next question was, do we have recreational immunity for this too?
Not sure about that one, Attorney Captain.
The insurance requirements are the same insurance requirements that they have for anytime you do any work around a railroad. This is their standard. Our insurance company is familiar with what their requirements are because this is just their standard. Just like we have a standard, this is what their
Well,
standard is.
I understand that, but is there an additional premium that we're going to be paying to add another $10 million worth of coverage for this particular?
What'll
Cross.
happen is we'll send it over to CIVMIC and then ask them if there is, if we need to add this on or not,
Okay.
or if it's included.
So then would future NENA pay for this, or would the city of Menasha pay for this additional policy?
City of Menasha.
Okay. So I would like to have that information on the clarification from the insurance company about that extra $10 million. And I guess Director Tungate or the attorney, do we have, like in our park system, if somebody falls in a river or something, do we have recreational immunity under the state? Do we have that with this?
It depends.
Okay?
Does that sound like an attorney answer?
That just opens it up real wide.
There is something that is called recreational immunity.
Yes.
It is in the statutes. If you have a specific fact pattern, and I'd have to have all the facts, then I could probably give you an opinion.
Okay. Well, I think we should have an opinion. I mean, if we're doing something like this,
What is the question?
I like to be ahead of the game. Do we have recreational immunity?
For
with
everything?
this-
No.
With this project? Once it's in play, somebody gets killed at that crossing, or something happens.
How do they get killed? There are infinite number of,
I understand that, but let's
If
say somebody
someone-
falls, somebody
here's
at
an
Jefferson
example.
Park
If-
falls
are
off
you
the
asking
shoreline
me if-
into the water and drowns, we are covered against that, we've had people try to take us to court with that at times. It has happened, and all I'm saying is that we're putting a trail system crossing the railroad tracks here. Is this part of recreational immunity? And, you want to research it, like you said, it's
no,
complex.
I
You
know
can
what
look at-
recreational immunity is. I don't really see a question, though. Does recreational immunity apply to what circumstance, I guess, is the question that I have for you. What circumstance are you talking about?
I guess that would be Director Tonke's expertise. What circumstances in the park systems warrant this immunity? There must be something that says X, Y, and Z why you have immunity.
Well, yeah, that would be a question to me, but I'm not understanding the question. Are you talking about people engaged in the act of walking for recreational purposes? There is something called recreational community or immunity. That is correct.
Again, I will ask Director
But
Tonke.
if you're asking if
We built a park.
someone's coming from the other direction on a bicycle and then they run into another person, is there recreational immunity for that person who was injured? And is it the person on the bicycle that was injured? Is it the person who was hit that was injured? And what were the circumstances of the
Somebody crosses the
injury?
track and a train kills them.
And how are they killed? And what are the circumstances?
Well, they got hit by a train is what I'm saying.
I think that what Attorney Captain is saying is that every situation has different circumstances, and
I think it's in play here that there's recreational immunity, and, if you want to slice it and dice it that thin at this point in every single scenario, we got all night, but I'm just asking, Director Tonke, is there a blanket coverage with our park system for recreational immunity with the state of Wisconsin that they provide for us?
I would, of course, defer to Pam's expertise on this, but my understanding is that generally speaking, yes, trails fall under the recreational immunity statute.
Okay.
As long as there's no gross negligence that can be proven that the city was responsible for, and I don't see...
Yeah, we're getting a little off course here
Yeah,
because
yeah.
gross negligence, we are not responsible for gross negligence under the statutes.
Right.
Okay.
So
If you'd like to put
it
something
depends.
together on that.
I don't have
that's
anything to
fine.
put
And
together
also
because I
with-
don't know what the
with $10 million
question is.
Policy, and let us know what that costs.
I just need to know the question, though.
I think maybe that's something that the both of you can work out in a separate
Yep,
conversation.
that'd be great.
What we're talking about is the agreement with the railroad today.
Well, I think it's a pertinent question with this because there's so many unanswered things with this project.
That's not really a question, though. You were asking something about is recreational immunity provided by the state, like insurance or something? That's,
Director Tonke.
As I said, I think that's a separate conversation
Well,
for
Director Tungate's been here
another
for 20-some
day.
years. I'm sure he understands the recreational immunity. Does that come from the state that the state has a statute or something that municipalities are covered under that. Isn't that where that comes from? It doesn't come from the city.
Actually, it is a statute, and it does apply to it applies to municipalities, it applies to the...
It's a state statute?
Correct, it's a
Yeah,
state statute.
that's what I said.
It applies, I said that as well. And it applies to not just municipalities, though, recreational immunity. If someone, as an example, if you have someone who's riding a motorcycle on your property, out because you have a few acres or something like that, and the person gets injured, it is likely that recreational immunity is a legal defense. So first, someone would have to file a lawsuit. Then one of the defenses that you would articulate is recreational immunity, because that person engaged in that activity. However, if you charge somebody, then that can nullify the recreational immunity. If, of course, intentional acts, if, there's a lot of factors that come into
What
play.
we've had in the city is we had a child fall into the river at Jefferson Park. Parents were drinking, they were watching a baseball game, not paying attention. They tried to sue us, and we were covered under the recreational immunity. Now, let's say a kid gets out of the house and walks down the trail and gets hit by a train on the trail. I'm just looking at the big picture, that we're being covered properly with insurance, and does this trail that we own it now fall under that state statute? That's all I was asking. So Mayor, when will we get all these dollar amounts for putting this portion of it together, the Fox Street portion of it together?
I'm not sure when the bids are going to be ready. Do you know that, Director Tungate?
I know that the engineer's working on that really as we speak. My guess would be in the next month or so, we should have his kind of final estimates.
Can this wait then?
No. We need to have this before we would send this out for bids.
Okay.
Because we can't send it out for bids if we do not know if we can cross the railroad tracks.
So in tonight, what we approve here, we are approving this map here, this crossing.
We are approving the license to be able to cross the bridge in a manner similar to what is shown on the drawing. It might not be exactly like that, but similar to that.
Okay. So help me out here if I want to make an amendment that we have a different change to this. If we had and what was the word, Brian? A double, like we have at Jefferson Apartments.
I'm not sure that,
That motion and a change, the design of the approach is not directly related to the license for the private road crossing. What we're voting to send to council this evening is simply this license which grants us the ability to cross the railroad. The engineer will continue to work on the design
Exactly.
and bring that project along with the estimated cost back to the council at a later date.
But it also includes insurance, indemnity, signals, construction, insurance, term of the contract. I mean, it's a very lengthy document, and I just want to make sure that I'm not voting on something here that I can't vote on later on. I'm not in favor of this crossing, so you're telling me I'm not voting on this this design of crossing tonight, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and that'll come back to us at another time, this crossing design?
We do not plan to bring back any more design documents, no, until it goes out for bid.
Well, why won't we have to approve this crossing and
We
before
don't,
it's bid out? We should be able to, before there's bids let on this, it might be safer way to do it.
are
That's
you
gonna
the,
change the
are you the
cost.
engineer that would be designing this? I mean, we hired an engineering company to design
Right.
these projects. This is, in their opinion, the best way to make that crossing. This is the design that they drew for us. It wasn't what Brian or Mark came up with. This
And
is
there's
what
there's
the
no
engineer
reason
came
like
up with.
At Jefferson Park, where you can dismount the bike and go through the
You don't
the
need
little
to
queuing system.
dismount your bike to go through the crossing at Jefferson Park.
Okay, well, the queuing system's a little bit different.
It's a little bit sharper, yes,
Yes,
but
sharper, yes.
you don't need to dismount on that one either. I go through that often.
Yeah, well, some people do, some people can't maybe negotiate as well as you. I've seen people get off, families stop there, and then walk their bikes across there, okay? So what I'm saying is that I want to be able to vote on the design, and if we're not voting on this design, then this design should come back at some point.
And what we're discussing this evening is simply this license for the crossing.
Right, and I have this map in front of me, and I'm asking when I'm going to be able to vote on this design.
The engineers will bring back the design at a later date.
Typically, what would happen is we would bring back the bids. The bids will have that in there. The location of the trail was already approved. We would not typically bring back a drawing.
I understand the trail is approved here, but I'm talking about,
The council does not typically design the
we're
trail.
paying for it. So, we're paying for it, so we should be able to say, hey, I don't think this is safe. I think we should do a little bit better on this. So, when do you want that brought back? When am I going to have that option to vote on it? Otherwise,
This is the design that's proposed. If you don't like this design, you should probably vote it down.
okay.
But this
And-
is the design that was proposed by the engineers that were
Where-
hired to do the
when
project.
and where can I make an amendment on this design? Because I want it on the record.
The design isn't part of the agreement, correct, Attorney
You could
Captain?
make a separate motion. It wouldn't go with this, though. But this is different than the design of the crossing, so, yeah. Mhm. So you're saying that it should go with this? If he wants to make an amendment?
It's up to the common council excuse me, the
Administration.
I'm like, which committee are we at here? Administration committee. If they would like to allow a motion that amends to indicate what was the other, full switchback? Full switchback, everyone votes on it, and then the issue's done tonight.
Point of order, what we're trying to do here is just to get permission, get it going with the railroad. And we gotta vote on that, and we could see 3 or 4 more changes before. We've seen 20 changes in the last 2 years on Loop the Lake. So we gotta vote on this tonight to go forward in the future. And believe me, if there's changes, you will see them in the future.
And that's all I'm trying, I agree with you 100%, Alderman Collier, but I'm asking right now when I'm going to be able to vote on the safety of this crossing. That's all, and I wanted someone to get back to me on the, if we're going to have to buy a separate $10 million policy, if that's going to cost the city more money through the year, and the recreational immunity. Now, I want to know when I'm going to be able to, this comes back to the council, that I can vote on it. That's all I'm asking, simple question here.
Alderman Collier's point of order is well taken.
Alderman
If-
Collier, I did not yield the floor, I have the floor, Alderman Collier did not have the floor.
Once a point of order is called, debate ceases, and the chair makes a ruling.
Fine, I appreciate the chair's ruling. When am I going to be able to vote on this crossing? I want it for city records. If somebody gets killed there, I said I'm not in favor of this. I want it in the record to state that, to show that. And I want to vote on this crossing.
The engineer is still working on the plans. And after the bids are let, we'll receive the results from those bids. This item this evening has to deal with granting us permission to cross the track. That's all it has to do with. This has been worked on for the last, I don't know, 6 months or so between city staff and the railroad. Alderman Taylor's brought up some questions about insurance. Attorney Captain, when you receive a document like this and it's approved or approved by the council, what happens then? Do you contact the insurance company with these extra documents? Could you explain that process so we can answer the question regarding insurance?
Once it's approved and signed, and obviously we don't need it yet, but that's when we go out and send it to our insurance company to ensure that it is one that's covered, because when we have to identify all of our property and stuff like that. Actually, we're going through that process right now.
Thank you for renewal.
On the agreement here, number 4, construction. The construction of the roadway, including the necessary grading, culverts, drainage on each side of the railroad track. The railroad company's track shall be performed by the licensee at its own risk and expense and to the satisfaction of the railroad company authorized representative. The railroad company will install the crossing proper from tie to tie, from end to end of the ties, and make the adjustments. So we're approving construction here tonight, and all I want to know from the mayor is when I can vote on this design, that I do not accept this design. I have 40 years of safety training, and I don't think it's enough. I'm sorry that I always go on the cautious side of things, and with 300,000 people crossing this, we need to be on the cautious side of it. And I want it for the record, as I did with the steam plant, when we had a dangerous situation, that it's on record that I wasn't for it. Because who's going to get the calls when something tragic happens? They're going to come up here and talk to us, and I can say I was not in favor of that. So when can I vote on this design, Mayor?
Mayor Marcus?
You can vote on it tonight. You can vote the agreement down if you don't believe that this is a safe crossing. This is this crossing that was proposed by the engineer and was given to the railroad.
Can I make a motion to have, and what did you call that, the other type
I'm
of
not
crossing?
sure what they call that other.
Called it the double switchback.
Double switchback, okay. And that just makes that you have an extra queuing system that people have to go.
It's like the one behind Jefferson Park Apartments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I make an amendment for that?
I asked the chair.
Although this is going to the council, I can do it next week on the council too. Is that correct?
Mayor Marcus?
You can do it at the council level. I will not accept it as a germane motion at that point because we're applying for the license at this point. We're not designing the trail. That's what we hire the engineers for. And this was the design that was given to us
Because
by
this
the
talks
engineers.
about all these things throughout this contract.
It's your choice.
Yeah, and they have to approve it, so there has to be approving this, you're approving this, because it says right in here that the
Ask-
railroad company.
You should ask the chair if she would consider that germane, and if she does, you can make that motion tonight.
I just want to state that to the satisfaction, construction of the roadway, including the necessary grading, culverts, drainage on each side of the railroad track, shall be performed by licensees at its own risk and expense, and to the satisfaction of the railroad company's authorized representative. So somebody's going to look at this and say, yeah, your grading, your construction looks good. Okay.
Are you asking me a question? I'm not sure what the question is, if you
Just
are.
putting it out there and talking to the whole council. If you'd like to answer it, fine, but for the chair, I mean, all I'm stating in here is that this construction under item 4, and I'll make an amendment to this if the chair allows it. All I can do is vote it up or down, that we have a double switchback. I'll make an amendment that we have a double switchback at this crossing as stated in this license contract.
Is there a second? Alderman Benner.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Chairman. My question is for, well, now we have a motion, and my question has nothing to do with the motion, so talk to you later.
Alderman Collier.
I realize what you're asking for, Dee Dee, but tread on light water, because if you go back and start dictating to the railroad, you might not get what you want. You might get what you want. You might not get permission to cross. So I feel that your amendment is in reason good, but I would not want to dictate to the railroad. And safety, I cross 4th Street on my bike, and I don't worry about getting run over by a train. Thank you.
Knowing that area down there and these silent boxcars, there's no, when you cross 4th Street, you have a controlled intersection, the lights go on, and you pretty much know some of it, gates go down. You know that there's something coming. On here, you don't. There's no electronic controls here whatsoever. And like we have behind Jefferson Park, I think that double queue system, or the switchback, that way the double switchback, serves it's not one factor, it's 2 factors in safety that you're approaching this, and you have to make a decision to do that. And all I wanted to do is, I'm putting it on here, that it's in the public record that I made this motion, and I'm not in favor of this, and when something terrible happens, I don't have to worry about it.
Is there any other discussion?
Yes, right here.
Alderman Benner.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my only thought on this was that we were approving the agreement to have the ability to do the crossing. This drawing to me is a conceptual drawing based off the information they have at this point, to be able, of what their perception is at this point, for a viable way to cross this. Once everything comes in with the remainder of the engineering, this could change. And once the final documents are finally made, I think that a person can review it, and I think there is opportunity at time to approve the spending of the dollars, potentially do something with this. But right now, I think that this license agreement is only for the ability to make the crossing, and this has potential to change, in my opinion. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Alderman Taylor.
We do have the opportunity here to, we have enough property here, enough land to make this double switchback, which I think would only, apparently, it's not even written in here in the construction, I mean, that we have to have a single or double or triple switchback. but all I'm seeing is I want to put this in ahead of time and then let the engineer decide it with the double switchback in it, so we don't have to go back to an engineer with extra costs and say, oh, no, we want a single switchback here, we don't want a double. All I'm seeing here is let's be on the side of safety, and 300,000 people using this, that's a lot of people, and things happen. Like I say, I have a 40-year career working in safety, and we take these things very, very serious. Thank you.
Alderman Zelensky?
My question is, if we approve this now and it comes back to we approve the dollar amount for this specific trail, if we decided on we wanted a double switchback then, would we have to go through the ringer again to get this approved and bring it back to them?
Well, I think what you have before you is the agreement that city staff and the railroad have come to. They've agreed to a conceptual design of the trail, where it connects, and the license fee is $750 for the preparation and handling of the agreement. The agreement itself is very vague. It doesn't specify what sort of switchback, thank you for that word, is required. It simply allows us permission to cross the track.
So you're saying we could put a double switchback in the future?
I'm saying that we don't design things here. We vote on agreements, but we don't design things. It's not our bailiwick. We don't do it. This is the agreement to cross the trail, and that's what it is, or cross the track.
Okay.
It really doesn't have anything to do with the approach or dismount of the trail.
So then why we're allowed for this amendment then?
So we can move on.
So
So we can move on, and if there's not any other discussion, we'll take a vote on that amendment after the clerk reads it back to us.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what's written.
Please read it back, thank you.
Let's see, I gotta find my right one here. Okay,
This is the amendment.
got it.
Thank you.
There's a mic still on the next one.
You have the floor.
Moved by Alderman Taylor, seconded by Alderman Zelensky to amend the lease to add a double switchback at the crossing as stated in the license contract. Does that sound right?
Can you read that one more time?
Okay. Moved by Alderman Taylor, seconded by Alderman Zelensky, is an amendment to add a double switchback at the crossing. It's stated in the lease, I'm sorry, thank you, in the license contract. It's not lease, you're right, license, thank you.
Any further discussion on that? Alderman Taylor?
Thank you. I'm sure the railroad would care less if we put 6 switchbacks in. You know, it's not listed in here that you're saying that this body, we receive a document here. Apparently there's some engineering been done. I'm trying to save us dollars to go back out at a later time and take care of this engineering now and do what we've had at Jefferson Park. It works very well and it's very safe. And I live on the Friendship Trail, and I watch families. Some are mom and dad, one's in front, one's in back, the kids are in the middle. Other kids are 5 driveways up in front of the family. They all regulate their bicycling a little bit different. And I don't want to see a kid get ahead here on this situation. It's not a singleized crossing, and because of that, I would like to have just a little better of a safety factor built in to that system, since there is no electronic crossing signs there. And it'll just slow everybody down to a pace where they're going through a queuing system and be more safe. Thank you.
Alderman
Could I
Zelinski.
interject a little something here?
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to summarize that you've had 3 sets of engineering eyes look at this. You've had Mark Radke look at it, you've had Pat from Grafe look at it, and you've had the railroad engineers look at it. So they all 3 had a chance to weigh in on this design, and at no time did I hear anybody say that this is an unsafe crossing.
Thank you for that. Alderman Zelinski.
Just because someone's an expert doesn't mean they're right. I go on this trail 3 times a week, if not more. We have the most oblivious generation known to man right now. I just read an article, someone got mauled by a bear because they were texting on their phone and they walked into it. So I think we definitely need a double switchback here. And this looks like our only time to do it, because if once we get the ball rolling, it seems like we can't go back, just like with this trail. Thank you.
I look at the Challenger disaster. They had an oversight of 2 different companies that called and said to NASA, don't launch tomorrow morning, it's too cold. And that's what happened. So Director Tugate, help me then. Why did we put a double switch back in at Jefferson Park?
This question is Jefferson Park discussion is not
Well, I'm
germane to
asking,
this amendment
what we've
right
done
now.
in the city in the past is, why have we put in a situation like this before, and that we don't, since it's worked, why aren't we using it again? He just said we had 3 engineers, and I'd like to know why we're not
I
engineering.
think each crossing is different, and that one's different than this one, and so that's why I think the railroad has said they're okay with this layout.
Okay. And that's an active line where they blow the horn coming into town, and this is a situation, like I said, I've watched this with these boxcars that they sail down the tracks, and it's silent, folks. You don't hear it. You don't hear it coming. And it's a situation that I just want to err on the caution side. And
Seeing no other discussion, we'll vote on the amendment to add a double switch to the design. Clerk Galiazzi, I accidentally pushed my button before, and I don't know. Thank you. I didn't want any confusion this time.
Motion fails on roll call. 2-5.
And now the original motion is back on the floor to forward to council the license for a private road crossing North Channel Bridge Recreational Trail Agreement between Wisconsin Central LTD and the City of Menasha. Alderman Benner.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for the attorney. This agreement is specifically to Wisconsin Central Limited. If through the osmosis of the legal process, if they sell or something, does this agreement automatically go to the new owner? Or if they sell this, could this agreement not be accepted by the new owner? Or is it null and void, or have to be renegotiated, or what would the process be?
Attorney Captain.
It's a license, just like we have the ability to get certain licenses here in the city of Menasha. There's a process, there's terms, there's conditions. You either do A through Z and pay the $750 and get the license, or you don't get it at all. So it's not an agreement where there's negotiations. There's no negotiation necessarily over anything, other than when you're talking to the railroad and you know, they're making a suggestion or they want something changed, then perhaps there's, you know, some discussion could occur with regard to changes. So I just wanted to clarify that. The railroad tells you what the rules are. They tell you what you will be putting in there. They will tell you how you will put it in there. They will tell you, you know, what the requirements are, and if you don't want to, then you can't put it in there. It's just the way the railroad, it's just the way that they work. They have all the power in these things. 30 days means that they can terminate for any reason if they wanted the successor, if there was a successor, the successor could say, no, we want you to get rid of all your licenses. Or the successor could say, yeah, we don't care, we'll keep all these licenses. That's just the way it works. A license in the law, all it means is someone is allowing you to, you know, use their property, and they will tell you when you will get off.
Yeah, I kind of was out of my own
I mean, once you have
ignorance.
a
I kind of
bridge and
assumed
stuff like that.
you know, the termination would mean that somehow we violated the agreement or something, and then it could
And that would be something for immediate,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
immediate termination. Otherwise,
Otherwise,
they'd
if they
give you
decide that they're
notice.
selling the company, they could give us 30 days
Sure.
notice and say, we're done. You can't cross there anymore.
With a license, that's just the way it works, and giving
Probably
30
not.
days is actually a lot. You don't have to give any notice when there's a license. You can just say, sorry, tomorrow, you can't come on this property anymore. That's the way a license works. It's not the same as an easement or an interest in property. It's not the same as an agreement, you know, where you negotiate back and forth over something. That's not what this is. Now, I will say that they have what do you call it? You know, there's a something that was adopted to encourage trails and the use of trails and stuff, and having the, you know, the abandoned railroad stuff, but also just railroad crossings in general. There's something at the federal level that they've adopted encouraging more trails and things like that in working with railroads, so that's positive.
But there really wouldn't be any legal recourse to
Nothing.
challenge a termination
No.
or anything like that
Nope.
if they decided they were going to terminate the agreement.
Correct. Exactly.
Sounds fun. Thanks.
Alderman Taylor?
Thank you. So at the next meeting, Attorney, I would like to have the state statute, I'm just repeating it, state statute on recreational immunity, what that statute is, and then also the cost and the coverage of the insurance policy. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, we'll take a vote on forwarding this item to the council.
Motion carries on roll call, 5-2.
And with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned.